Fort St. Pierre was founded in 1718 in Warren County, Mississippi, which is just outside of Vicksburg. Sitting along the Mississippi River, the fort was functional for about 10 years before its downfall in 1729. Today, archaeologists use methods such as shovel test pits to find artifacts such as glass beads. At this site, two particular types of beads were found: wound beads and drawn beads. Drawn beads were the most plentiful by far. Drawn beads, also known as cane beads, seed beads, or tube beads, first came to be made in ancient Rome, and the technique was then employed in India, Italy, France, and northwestern Europe. Glass beads were then shipped to North America as a trade item. The specific bead types found at Fort St. Pierre are most likely from Venice, Italy. The Venetians were very skilled craftsmen, and they used the same bead-making process to create drawn beads as the Romans. The Venetians brought their designs to the Netherlands. Beads were also produced in Paris and London. From Europe, the beads were quickly traded to the Americas, which is how the beads made their way to the fort in Mississippi. According to Elizabeth Harris, to properly make drawn beads, one must have a glass furnace, a long space for stretching out the glass, a puntil, and glass cutters. First, one worker heats up the glass to its melting point in the glass furnace. The worker then takes a long metal rod and pulls out a gather of melted glass. A gather is a group or a bundle of something such as glass or harvest. Next, a second worker blows a bubble using a parison. Third, the second worker uses a puntil to marver and shape the glass into the proper shape. A puntil is a solid metal rod that is used to transfer and shape molten glass during the bead-making process. After the second worker finishes making the bubble, the first worker puts the glass gather back into the furnace to reheat it. This helped with further molding of the glass into beads. When the first worker pulls the gather back out of the furnace, the second attaches the bubble using the puntil. Both then step out into the long area of land and slowly pull away from each other while still holding onto their own side. Generally, the average length that the workers would stretch the molten glass out was 150 feet. This stretching formed a long tube in which the beads could be cut. In order to get the proper size of the beads before they were cut, the workers first used clamps to make impressions on the glass while it was still warm. This showed the second-tier workers where to cut the glass with the glass cutters to properly form the beads. Finally, after the beads were cut, they were placed in a large metal drum or barrel with a mixture of sand and ash and rotated to smoothen out the beads. As the barrel would rotate, the sand and ash mixture would slowly smooth out the imperfections in the beads, would soften the harsh cut edges, and could form spherical beads. Not only did this process smooth the beads, but it helps them to dry faster as well. Some of the main uses for beads in the early 18th century were trade and fashion. Beads were traded for different monetary values based on size, color, and shape. Historically, the most popular colors are pale blue, black, and white. These beads were made in many different shapes, forms, colors, and sizes. One of the most common bead classification systems is the Kid and Kid system. The Kid and Kid system, developed in 1970, is a bead classification system that organizes beads into different categories by their length, size, color, and shape. There are 5 general sizes in which archaeologists categorize these beads: very small, small, medium, large, and very large. Generally, drawn or seed beads are only 2 of the 5 sizes, very small and small. This puts the approximate length range for these beads from 2 millimeters to 4 millimeters long. According to Dr. Lisa Marie Malishki, attributes such as structure, manufacturing method, and color combined are enough to define a distinct type of bead. This means that the physical characteristics of beads are just as important to show how they were made as to where they were made and who made them. There are also 5 shapes that are most commonly used for larger beads, but it can be used for smaller beads as well. They are round, oval, tube, faceted, and donut. Tube beads, or drawn beads, are cylindrical beads with perpendicular ends, sharp or rounded, and the length exceeds the diameter. The Kid and Kid system has been used in countless other archaeological dig sites to help identify beads and where they originated from. These types of beads, in addition to other colors, were traded and shipped to France, which were passed on to explorers who brought them to the Americas in the early 16th century. Due to explorers bringing the beads over, the natives living in the Americas chose to adopt new forms of trade and decoration. When explorers brought the beads with them, the natives living in the Americas quickly incorporated the items, like these drawn beads, into their own trade and decoration practices.